It's a special TX Water Polo podcast today featuring my conversation with another of Texas's greatest water polo exports, Zane Bilal. As a Baytown Sterling High School standout in the late 2000s, he attracted the attention of some of the biggest names in collegiate water polo, and maybe the biggest of them all, USC convinced him to settle in Los Angeles, where he proceeded to win 3 NCAA championships. We talk about that experience, his great teams at Ross Sterling, his place in the list of top Texas water polo athletes, and a game at Stanford that did not go as expected in many ways. So, one note, you're going to now experience our first attempt at using Zoom to record a conversation, and it did not go well. Luckily, Zane sounds absolutely fine, but you'll have to forgive the even more tinny sound that's coming from me. Wrong microphone, it seems. So anyway, you've been warned, and now, Zane Bilal. Here we go.
2007 TISCA Water Polo Most Valuable Player, 3-time NCAA champion at USC, and considered among the best ever to come out of the state of Texas. It's Zane Bilal. How are you doing, Zane?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Well, as good as can be expected, being locked up in the house. Although things are opening up, we will. That's going to be a topic of conversation for the next podcast with Joe. I found out some stuff about my club, which is actually quite encouraging. So, what about for you? You are in Lubbock, correct? And what has that been like? Because you're in the midst of your med school career, basically, and obviously this has thrown everyone for a loop. How has it affected you?
Yeah, so typically right now I'd be finishing up my third year. I'd be in the hospital doing some clinical rotations, but right now I'm actually home in Baytown, and I'm doing class virtually through Zoom, doing questions, preparing for board exams right now. And then whenever things kind of open back up for the hospitals or open back up for medical school, then we'll go back and finish some of our clinical stuff. So it's a different experience right now, but I think we're lucky that we can actually do some things virtually and still, do everything we need to do to get our license. So pretty fortunate.
And do you have any sense from your school about when you might be able to get back in the hospital or back up to campus?
Yeah, so the plan right now, and the plans, obviously the targets keep moving, but the plan right now is for us to go back on June 8th.
Okay.
We'll have an exam around that time, and then we'll try to get as much clinical work in before we technically start fourth year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the one good thing is this is giving you a break from the end of your life. Because if anybody doesn't know about med school, like your fourth year is apparently sort of easier, and then your residency, you're
done. The fourth year you get some time off to quote unquote like schedule for
right.
Stuff like that, but it's supposed to be the kind of calm before the storm.
This is the glamour of becoming a physician. Well done. Okay. Well, congratulations on that part. That's actually a big step, and
thank you. I appreciate that.
But as you know, we're hosting a virtual competition of all the high school teams that have ever participated in Texas, and we are at the championship. So that voting is open as we speak. And your team from Baytown Sterling in 2007 will be facing the 01 Baytown Sterling team. Actually, not will, but is. That polling is open. So given that, let's start with your recollections, first of all, of that final season in 07, because that you won the MVP, your team won the state championship, and then it obviously propelled you into a career in college. But what is your recollection of that particular season, if you have any?
Well, I think it'd be hard for me to talk about 2007 without talking about 2006, because the year before that, it was basically that entire 2017 team with Austin and Dannon, who were our two seniors who had left. But we weren't able to actually play in the final. We lost to Cy Creek in the semifinals. Mm-hmm. And that was tough because I'd broken my arm. I was gone basically most of the year. So I came back for the state tournament, and I essentially wasn't the same. And there was some, if I remember correctly, there was some like controversial calls in that game, but whatever. Cy Creek won fair and square for sure. And then Austin actually wasn't able to play in the tournament. He had like a health issue that he was dealing with. And so like two of our top players were not the same or not able to play. And I feel like that team was actually better than the 2017
Really?
team. Yeah, I personally feel like that 2016 was better. We just, just unfortunate that we weren't able to play at full strength at the right time. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think losing that tournament, not being healthy really kind of, whenever we thought we would have had a good chance, kind of propelled us into the next year. I felt like everyone was really focused. We were really close knit. Coach Slay and TJ were, really great coaches and prepared us for all the games. I felt like we had it felt like a pretty smooth season, and we were all pretty much laser focused on like what we wanted to get done. So it was really satisfying.
Right. So that season, I don't know if you call it smooth, and that's interesting because I'm wondering if there were any particular highlights, because a lot of seasons are, they're roller coasters, but yours, it sounded to me, was like almost predictable.
Well, I think, the year before us, there was a lot of talent that had left, right? Like with the two Austin Oliver, Austin DeLong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, I believe Side Creek won that year, and that was a really solid team. So I felt like, this is our time. Like if there's any time for us to win, we had kind of, not really personally lived up to our expectations from my freshman year all the way through our junior year.
Right.
So this was just like, let's get this done. I feel like I didn't feel like my high school career would have been complete without actually winning the state championship, because ultimately, like, that's why we practiced in the summer, right? That's why we did swimming. That's why we did all these things throughout the year, was for the state championship, not necessarily to play in college or to go on to have college careers. That ended up being a result of that, but I think we really have always wanted to put the banner up, and that was our goal from the beginning. So
right. Those teams between 06 and 07, I obviously was not here, so I'm not terribly familiar with them, but they're apparently just loaded with talent. What can you tell us about the other guys on either one of those teams? Who are the standouts? What do you remember about them?
Yeah. So 06 the seniors, Austin Oliver. First of all, we all grew up together. Like, we've all literally been playing with each other since I was in elementary school or junior high. Like, we had known each other for so many years. So we were all pretty close and like brothers. But Austin, he was our main 2-meter man. He has the most amazing backhand I've ever seen. He is strong. He's a good defender. He's smart. He's a really good passer. Has really good vision. He's just an excellent all-around player, and that kind of proved out when he was in college, when he was putting up pretty solid numbers at Occidental. The other senior was Dannon Ponder. He's got some length. He's got some height. He's fast. He can shoot the ball. He's a really good, reliable defender. He kind of gets under the skin of the other team because he likes to to mess around a little bit. But he's an awesome teammate, and he was a really good player for us. Obviously, Matt Chapa, fast, quick, athletic, can get up. Knows. I feel like him and we had played with each other for a long time as well, so we kind of knew where each of us were going. Like, at all times, like, you kind of just know, if I get a steal, I know Matt's gone. Like, I know where he's going, right? Like, he's up the court in a flash, and you just kind of get it outlet to him as fast as you can so he can finish. He's a really good finisher as well. Stevie, I know Coach Mack talked about his growth from kind of being a chubbier kid, but he really grew from sophomore year till junior year. That was the big transition where he really grew, and he was kind of learning his body the junior year. So he was kind of learning, like, what was comfortable for him, I think. And then by the time senior year came around, he was able to fill in for Austin as our, like, really solid, dominant 2-meter presence. He was on the post. You could essentially, if I was playing the 4 spot, right? I don't know what the numbering system is now, but if I was playing the 4 spot on 6-on-5, essentially where I'm on the left post, but I'm I'm the guy that has the ball up top.
Yeah.
And if I rotate towards the middle and Stevie's on that 2-post, like if players are coming to me, I give it to him.
Mm.
If players are coming to me and they're crashing to Stevie, Matt is at the 1 and I throw it to Matt and he scores really quickly. Like, so it was just it was a really fun experience to have a really close connection with people and kind of, be able to fill in positions and make passes and know that you can play defense all together and everyone's on the same page. Like, it was just kind of like poetry in motion almost sometimes.
Nice.
Like, it was fun.
And we're going to come back to this, but these are all teammates from Viper Pigeon as well, right?
So Viper Pigeon didn't start until after. Yeah, it didn't start until after I graduated high school. We were actually Dirty Bay first.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, we're the Dirty Bay Buccaneers. And the first time all of us played together in a tournament, like a pretty big tournament, was actually Speedo Cup when I was in 7th grade.
Wow.
So, but we had been playing locally since I was in 3rd grade or something like that. We've been playing in the Jalapeno League tournament. I remember everyone wanted to be the Hot Peppers. So,
and these guys on your Sterling team were essentially on that same club program.
Yeah.
Okay. So you basically had a system in place before you even got there. One of the commonalities between all of this is Scott Slay, and we've had conversations with him, obviously. He was there basically from the point at which you started playing until you left. Is that more or less correct?
Yeah, like some of my earliest memories are when I first started Summer League swimming and I started water polo that same year was Scott. He was always there for us, and he was always involved in our development. And I think the thing that is really awesome about him is that he really focuses on developing young players. You can't say that enough. You can't just have a good high school team without having good players to continually develop to bring into that high school. So I think that was something that he was really good at, and that's what ultimately allowed us to be successful.
He's had a ton of success, obviously, and had played in college as well. So I'm curious about how his role and just the general process of you getting to USC. So Texans in general are sort of dispersed to the schools across the country, but not really to USC, not terribly often. So I'm wondering how does that happen? You're in your senior year, you know that you're having a successful season. Is USC contacting you? Are you contacting them? What do you remember about that process?
So generally, it all starts like with the national team, right? So Scott was always a proponent for us to go to California and go train as much as we can and go try out for the national team. And so I had made a few of the select teams and the what are they called? The youth teams and stuff like that. So I had relatively decent exposure to some college coaches. And then you kind of just get stuff in the mail. Like, people would send you stuff in the mail. You fill out like your swim times and you fill out like your interests and stuff like that. I don't remember exactly what the mail was. There's probably email now or probably some Zoom meeting now. I feel like an old man, but yeah, you get letters in the mail, you fill them out, and then you start contacting the coach. Like, sometimes I think there was like a list on usawaterpolo.com or something like that.
Yeah.
And they had a list of all the college coaches and their emails. And so I would personally just go down the list of schools that I was interested in, and I would send them an email, and if they responded, if they didn't, they didn't. Like, you kind of have to put in the legwork, especially being from Texas. You have to show your interest for them to even have an interest in you. Sometimes they don't even know who you are, right? So you have to put yourself out there, and that was kind of my thing of trying to get into USC. And then in terms of USC specifically, between my junior and senior year of high school, my national team coach was Robert Lynn.
Mm.
And
No.
Robert Lynn, a USC alum. And so he did Coach Lynn was pretty influential in like fixing some of my like technique issues, stuff like that. Like he helped tweak some of my game a lot that I think helped me from junior to senior year as well. But I think he put in a good word for me with Coach Vavich, and that helped me a lot. But I think I don't want to discredit like Scott's influence. I think Scott allowed me to play in California a lot more than a lot of other kids may have been allowed to play, right? Like I think he allowed me to have that exposure, and to gain that experience away from the Texas club.
Right.
And he was totally for me, always trying to improve my game. And so that was super influential.
Just for trivia's sake, Robert Lynn was my high school teammate. He's the smartest water polo player I've ever seen. Like
yes.
And he's a very interesting fella. So he's very, very interesting. But man, oh man, that guy knew what was going to happen 4 steps in advance.
Yeah, he is amazing. And he had like this system that he would run, like this Hungarian system. It was like every day you were doing the exact same thing, and you were building on specific basic skills every single day. And I thought that was really cool, and something that I kind of tried to do whenever I would leave the summer. I would leave the U.S. water polo team and talk with some of our coaches, and we kind of just try to start doing some of the stuff that they were doing. So it was cool to learn from Coach Lynn. He was awesome.
Yeah, he played overseas for quite a while, and from my a conversation I had with him about a decade ago, he just relayed how when he was playing in France, one of his coaches was Serbian, and that guy essentially became his guru. So he learned everything from, I don't recall the name, but from that guy. He was coaching Harvard Westlake at the time.
Okay.
One of the times that I saw him, and I watched it, and I'd been out of the game for a while, so things had changed. But his offense, I remember talking to him afterwards, and we're like, your offense is so boring. Meaning he's basic, and all he was doing was probing for openings, right? So the ball gets passed back and forth between 3 and 4, 3 and 4, 3 and 4. And then there might be a slight drive and some place to clear out, and that was it. And he talked about how his coach was really into simplicity and finding these gaps that the defense was going to allow you to have. It was really fascinating stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. And to add to that, even on like 6-on-5, like just kind of like you were saying, probing for openings and kind of just, it's like these like micro movements. Like just kind of like filling in that space. And then once that space opens and once you fill it in, like how are people reacting to you? And from that reaction, you know exactly what to do, whether to pass or whether to shoot, or whether to fake. So
right.
I thought it was pretty cool.
And having your toes pointed the correct direction and your hand sculling in the right direction and all the it's that
and even the way you hold the ball up, like he had a very specific, like you start with the ball in front of you, you pick it up from underneath, you bring it around, and then he had a very, like every day in practice, that we would do that for like 10-15 minutes.
Wow. So really interesting.
Yeah.
So that actually gave you a bit of a leg up. And then, so here's a quote that I found from the Baytown Sun back in the day. It said that you could have picked an easier place to play than USC, which you chose over California, other schools from California, Occidental, Santa Clara, Stanford, and LMU. Is that accurate?
I did not get into Stanford, but the other schools, I think I got into Santa Clara. I think I did, but I know I definitely got into LMU.
Okay.
I got into LMU pretty early on in senior year. So it's also nice to have like kind of a team that was really good at the time. LMU was really good. And I really liked the school and the coaches and the campus. And then USC kind of came on later, like after the season. And I made a visit to USC in November. And that's when I was like, okay, this is where I want to be. But
That's
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say I actually went to a junior day, which was kind of weird because it was all junior people, so I didn't really know them. But I was just there I went with my mom and we visited the campus. We saw a game. We met some of the players, and it was really cool because I knew some of the players. Like Borisov was one of my good friends from the team. Him and his dad have always been super supportive of me because a lot of times people from California, at least before getting into USC, they kind of thumb their nose at Texas water polo, and like they don't really they kind of make it harder for you than it would be for some other kids. But I felt like having that USC connection with Devin Borisov and his dad and they were always supportive of me, and I felt like, if I go to this school, I know that I'll have someone in my corner and a friend and like someone who can help me out. So that was pretty cool as well.
Well, let's get into that. That's super interesting. So, as we've mentioned, Texans are considered something. We don't know exactly what. So when you show up, like you're on the team and you redshirt the first year. So what is it that you're actually doing your freshman year?
I went to, as a freshman, so when you're redshirting, you're learning the system. That's your thing. And so I learned the system, which was something that was a little bit foreign to me in terms of having to learn like specific plays and stuff like that, which was interesting. So I was learning the system and then also obviously getting in shape. But the thing that was also required of us, or something that helped us learn or helped me learn in particular, was we filmed the games, and as you film the games, you had to narrate them. And so because every game is taped, and then Jovan would watch every game after that, and then he would even comment on your narration if you weren't doing a good job.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that kind of helped me learn the system and kind of get up to speed, because you have to know where every player is, what their numbers are, obviously, but like where they're supposed to be and where they're going. And obviously you're reporting on the results of the play and all that. But I think that was pretty cool, and something that I was, at first I was like, oh man, we have to do this. But then you realize, okay, I'm actually learning, and this is fun. So yeah, freshman year, you're doing that. I went to all the practices. You're practicing against the first team all the time. Like you're involved. It's not like redshirt year, you're just kind of sitting around. It's basically everything but the game.
Got it. Well, that's what I was going to get at, right? So you're actually in the pool for your freshman year, even though you're redshirting, because you're training with everybody else. What are your recollections about that? Those first practices, like there's that first, I don't know if you have Hell Week, you've got a couple of weeks where you're basically exposing yourself to everybody else on the team. What are your recollections about what their impressions were of you, having come from a place that does not necessarily produce all these as many players?
One of the things I remember in particular was, we came in and did like a Hell Week, but because I was from Texas, there was some rule. I don't know if they still have it, but if you didn't live within like 50 miles of the school, then you couldn't participate in the summer activities. And so a lot of the freshmen who were able to participate in some of those summer activities kind of had a leg up because they're from LA.
Right.
And so I remember coming in and being like, okay, I wish I had had the opportunity to do something this summer, right? So that I could come in and try to contribute, but it just didn't seem like it was in the cards, and I felt like I was a little bit behind. But the team itself, I felt like almost automatically people were really receptive of me. They were really, really nice, helpful. Particularly like a lot of the freshmen that I was with, like we really bonded pretty quickly. I was lucky that I had actually one of my best friends from my water polo career in Michael Rosenthal, who I was rooming with. And so we had known each other since 8th grade, 9th grade or something like that. So there was a lot of familiarity on that team. And like I said, with the Borisovs and meeting all those guys. Like, I feel like everyone was pretty receptive and awesome to me, to be honest.
So, and Rosenthal's from Miami. So you're
he's from Miami.
suggesting, yeah, and so you're suggesting basically that the rest of the team, including him, you never got any eye rolls, or nobody was ever criticizing, like, you don't know what the hell you're doing, any of
that. I'm sure I did some stuff. I'm not going to say I didn't. Nothing really sticks out like as a sore thumb. Like,
that's
there's
great.
nothing really sticks out as to where, like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everyone gets yelled at so much. Like, it's not like it doesn't, and I will say, it's honestly like, it's kind of good in a way. Like, I feel like now if I were to mess up doing something, like if somebody yells at me, it doesn't affect me the same way as it would maybe someone else who's never really dealt with that type of personality. So I feel like right away you kind of get yelled at. Like, it's just it's par for the course. Like, it's just kind of what happens. And you get over it. Sometimes some things will be said that get under your skin, but for the most part, like, you know what to expect.
Jovan has made med school just a cakewalk for you. Yeah.
Essentially, yes.
We've reached the halfway point of today's podcast, and we'll return after this.
In many podcasts, this time would be filled with ads for electric toothbrushes or recruiting services. Not here. Instead, we're asking you to show your support for TX Water Polo by donating to it. Go to txwaterpolo.com/donate and help us continue covering the sport we love in the Lone Star State.
Hi, I'm U.S. Olympian Janai Kerr, and when I need to stay up to date with my water polo news in Texas, I listen to the TX Water Polo podcast.
Now, part 2 of today's show.
Okay, so and then just if you could, like, now that you look back on that, what do you think you were prepared for, and what were you not prepared for when you started playing at USC?
So prepared for, I was in shape. I was ready to go. At least swimming wise, I think one of the things I probably could have done that summer before, or even a few years before, was really get into the weight room. Like, these guys were not only bigger than me in terms of height, but they're also significantly stronger. And that's something I needed to work on for sure. I think the concepts of the plays were pretty easy to understand. Some of the defensive plays were a little bit more intricate than I had ever really dealt with before. But I think in general, like, the concepts were pretty solid, and they always harken back to fundamentals. So, like, you can kind of figure it out, but just kind of memorizing the plays and like really getting into the playbook is something I'd never really needed to do. Like, we didn't really have a huge playbook in high school or even on like the national team. Like, you just you had a system, like you kind of played off of feel more or less,
right,
rather than playing off of like very rigid, like, this is the play we're running right now, right? Like, rather than just like figuring out what side the two man's on, like the whole man is on, you're actually, maybe that whole guy is being a decoy now, and you're running like a pick on this side, and then you're running like a drive on the other side. You know what I mean? So it's just a lot. It's a lot more to kind of digest and a lot more to kind of understand, and it's just a lot faster. So it took me some time to kind of get a full grasp of those concepts and be able to apply them. So.
Okay. Let's move on. So 2009, you're a redshirt freshman. And what's curious is that you were there with St. Mark's, Michael Shashua. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, Shashua. Yeah,
Shashua. Does the fact that there's another Texan there make much of a difference? I mean, you'd obviously established friendships with other people anyway, but did that matter to you at all?
Yeah, of course. Michael Shashua, I've known him obviously for a while before that as well. So we were good friends, and so it's always, I would say it's always good to have people that you know and like and can trust, who are around you. And he was a really good teammate and a good friend, and I was really happy to have him around for sure.
Right.
LA it's a big place. USC's, it's a private school, but it's a pretty big private school as well.
Yeah.
And so it was great having Michael around and graduating with him.
Excellent. And we've neglected to mention 08, 09 national champions. I mean, that's got to be quite something. You've made the determination at some point that USC is where you want to go, and next thing you know, you're a champion.
Yeah, and kind of like the start of a dynasty, I would
Right.
say. That was pretty cool.
So then 2010, redshirt sophomore, and here's the most important part of your year was that when I watched you play. So living in the Bay Area at the time, you came up to Stanford, and unfortunately for you, you lost only one of 2 games of the whole year. It's a 5-3 loss to Stanford. Intense atmosphere from my recollections. Really fun, but I don't know whether you remember that game at all.
I totally remember that game. And that was funny because, Stanford is known to be like the nerds, obviously, right? Like,
don't get me started with that nonsense, but yeah, go ahead.
No, but they're known to, from an outsider's perspective, they're known to be like these highly intellectual people. And, obviously they're very smart, but that was the first time, man, I'd been heckled. I was heckled there like I'd never been heckled before.
Oh, yes.
Like racial stuff too. Like they were talking about like, it was not pleasant, and I was not happy at some of those fans. But
no, they're the ones who are on
atmosphere.
They're the ones on the sunny side of the pool, because that's where I was, and they're the ones who are closest. Actually, that's where the benches are. The benches are, I can't remember, that must be the east side, but the benches are on that side, and they're basically looking down on you from this sort of auditorium kind of thing, and they're right there. So yeah, by the way, it wasn't me who was insulting you.
No, yeah, no, it was totally.
Yeah,
it was definitely some students.
I was an objective observer, but yeah, that's not good that they went that direction. So I did not know that. I didn't hear it at the time, so that's not good. And
but the atmosphere in of itself is unlike any other. I thought it was pretty cool. Besides some of the heckling, but honestly, like it was an amazing experience.
All right. I have a question for you about that, because this was not something I was going to bring up. Do you have any sense for when somebody goes that ridiculous racial direction, if it's just basically trying to get under your skin, or do you get the sense that they really mean it, or does it matter?
I think it matters. It matters for sure. But if you can kind of, like you said, decipher if someone's really just trying to get under your skin or if they really mean it, then that's whenever you should, make sure that they know that that's not the right thing to do, I guess. I mean, obviously I wasn't in a position where I'm going to be yelling at the people who are heckling at me. I don't think that would bring a good light on myself. But if they cross the line, I would definitely have done something. I'm not saying physical, but I'm just saying, like, I definitely would have told somebody, like security or something, to make sure that they knew what was going on. Like it wasn't to like a super bad extent of what they were saying. So it was somewhat in jest, but like if they had done something that had crossed the line, I would have told somebody.
It brings to mind, because back in the old NFL days, and maybe it's still the case, I don't really know, but during games, like, people would say things to each other that were 100% unacceptable in polite company, and so and it was all psychological. I'm sure that there were genuine racists, undoubtedly, but you can think that they were also just trying to screw with somebody else's mind. That's the only reason I even ask.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a psychology to it, or a psychology aspect to it. So yeah, and it can definitely affect people. I can see how that could affect someone.
Yeah.
Like it's hard playing in a place where you don't feel comfortable, or in a space where you don't feel comfortable. So I can see how that would be an effective way, but probably not a way that I would go about.
No.
trash
No.
talking another team. So
You would think that the enlightened students of Stanford would be above,
yeah.
that, but and let me editorialize for a moment. There's nothing more nauseating than this nerd nation nonsense that comes out of Stanford. This is just my opinion, because they're not that special. So they are very good students. They get into this school, but this whole thing, we're like, oh, we're above it all because we wear, cool framed glasses and we have tape on the middle. I don't like it at all. So my apologies to you Stanford fans. I lived there for a while, so I got to see it in first person, but it's just, I wish they would move on from that.
Yeah.
The student athlete is totally fine. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of me ranting. So at the end of that season, your third national championship, a win over Cal. Do you have any recollections of that game?
Like double overtime.
Was that right?
Yeah, like in
Yeah.
the rain.
Yeah.
that was beating Cal at Cal, a team that they had. I forget the names of their two European guys that were pretty good, but just like that was a team that kind of always got under your skin. Cal, and like it's just really satisfying to finish them. I think Nikola Babic had like an amazing game. He ended up hitting the game winner, I believe. And like I just remember jumping in the pool and celebrating with everyone. That was pretty awesome.
Great stuff. Yeah, that atmosphere, because it's at speaker, however you pronounce it,
Yeah.
and the seats are right there, basically on the deck, and it is raining, like it is pouring, and the obviously there are some well lubricated fans in the stands, and and they're having a good time, but otherwise you would think like this is just miserable because it's Bay Area sort of rain. It's chilly, so really one of the most memorable atmospheres I can remember, and I wasn't even there. I was just watching it streamed, I think, at the time.
Yeah, that was amazing.
So then after that, you're basically done. Is that correct? I mean, tell us a little bit about what happens next with you personally as part of the team and as just a student.
Yeah, so I'd been dealing with some hip injuries at the time, and I was practicing every day, but I wasn't feeling the same, and I didn't feel like I was personally gonna be playing enough to like justify what my body was gonna go through.
Yeah.
Like there was a really close. I was really close to getting hip surgery and like rehabbing and doing all that stuff. But I just kind of decided, like, it was like going into my senior year, kind of thinking about what I wanted to do after college. And I was like, you know what, I'm an econ major now, but I really want to go to med school. Something that I'd always kind of thought in the back of my head, like, I should just pull the trigger and go and do this whole med school thing. And so I just decided I wasn't going to play anymore. And I went up to Jovan's office and I talked with him and I told him, like, hey, I want to be a doctor, and I don't know if I can play water polo with this much time commitment and not necessarily focus as much on school as I probably should have or could have. And he was totally supportive of me, and he was like, he's like, I've seen a lot of people stop just because they wanted to quit, but to actually have like a plan, like that was something that he thought was relatively impressive and something that he always respected me for. And like, I've always had a pretty solid, relationship with him. Like I did not leave the team like in bad blood or anything like that. Like I talked with him, I talked with the entire team, like right after that, before like our weight session. So it wasn't like I kind of just like left. It was more or less like me making sure that everybody knew what was going on and what my plans were ultimately. So it was something I felt comfortable doing, and to this day I think it was a good idea for me to do, and I don't really regret it at all.
I was going to ask you exactly that, because you could see in theory, even though you're in the midst of actually achieving the things that you want to do career-wise, you could look back and think, I could have done one more year or something like that. But you're comfortable with the way things left off. Yeah,
and it's also like those are my best friends too. So like seeing them win, like I was there. I think the next year was at Cal again. Was it at Cal again the next year?
I don't remember that one. Yeah.
But I went to a lot of those games, majority of those games, I definitely went up to the final as well. Like seeing my friends win as well was something that was really important to me. So I was really happy for them, like legitimately happy for them. And, you know, I had made this choice that was kind of outside of, you know, the influence of that. So I thought, you know, that's what was best for me. And ultimately it ended up working out. So
Great.
I really don't have any regrets of doing what I did. And I'm pretty happy with it.
Right, and you mentioned Jovan. We can't get away from the fact that the allegations that he's facing. He was let go, and he's a part of an investigation into admissions fraud. I don't necessarily want to go into that, and you're obviously free to comment one way or the other. But I want to know more about him as a coach because, and you made mention of his style and so on. He's almost universally admired by his athletes, as far as I know, and I would argue he's the best collegiate coach in history. I don't know if there's a huge amount of debate about that. But what else can you tell us about his style? What did you notice about it that was so different from maybe the other coaches in college water polo?
I think the thing that set him apart was just his preparedness. Like, we studied other teams better than they studied themselves sometimes. I felt like we knew exactly what they were coming out to do. We knew exactly how they used their players. And that was all a testament to the scouting that he would do, the scouting that him and the staff would do, Coach Pinterich and Coach Moon. They were workaholics, like that entire coaching staff. And like his quote, or Jovan's kind of quote that he would always say to us was, you know, expect the best, but prepare for the worst.
Right.
So we would always know exactly what to do in certain situations. And I think, you know, we were in better shape than everyone else. And I felt like we were in better shape than everyone else. We were able to finish games. And also I felt like we were better prepared than other teams. And then he would also pull in plays, I think, from like European leagues and stuff like that he would see whenever he goes home, that maybe some other coaches may not have the opportunity to go see. So I think that, combined with his work ethic and his acumen for the game, is just what set him apart from other coaches and allowed him to sustain that success for such a long time. And like, you can tell when someone's doing the right thing when new players are coming in year after year and you're getting the same results.
Right. Exactly. So I want to mention to you, there's a Sports Illustrated article that references what we talked about with Jovan from 2019, but I wanted to give you a quote and see what you had to say about that. It says, quote, Vavic would work with his top players at one end of the pool while his assistants schooled the red shirts at the other. Then Vavic would weed out the weaker players with his grueling practices, his grating coaching style, and hours of, quote, punishment swims. Is that something that resonates with you, or do you have a different version of events?
I mean, I've definitely been involved in a punishment swim. Like there were certain rules, like if you, let's say, okay, so I'm a 2 meter, let's say I went in and post up on 2 meters, right? And the ball turned over. And in that turnover, if I committed if I got ejected in the backcourt, that was an automatic 100 hundreds. Like, there's just like things that you know not to do. And I did that. I did that once or twice for sure. I remember that. But I wouldn't say that was very common. If we were messing around in practice, if the focus wasn't there, we're sprinting. Like, I think that's a lot of coaches, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't think that's like out of this world. But there were rules that you knew if you broke, then you would get punished, and that's just kind of how it went. And I wasn't someone who, if I did something wrong, I wasn't going to shy away from it. Like, if I did something wrong and that was the rule, then, you know, that's the way it goes. It's unfortunate. I may not have thought I should have gotten called. And actually, on a lot of those, if he felt like, if he would go back in the tape just to make sure that it was a legit call. And if it wasn't a legit call, you wouldn't have to swim.
Okay.
If you felt Fair like enough. It was unfair, you wouldn't have to swim. So
that's excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Another quote, and this will be the last one, but I'm very curious. That redshirt class that you were part of, I think it said there were 16 of you, including Rosenthal.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could have fielded just an immensely talented team if just that redshirt class had hopped in together. But one of your teammates, Matt Burton from Miracosta, was quoted in this piece as saying, "Players would leave all the time, unhappy with their playing time, fed up over Bobich's coaching style, or simply more interested in focusing on school." That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And he'd say, I'd say there were usually 5 or 6 guys that dropped out every year. We talked about this a little bit before off the air, but what is it so given those circumstances, what made you stay?
I felt like I could handle the coaching style. I felt like, you kind of go through it once and you kind of get like what the point is. It's annoying. I'm not saying it's not difficult or not annoying, but you kind of understand like, okay, this is where he's coming from, or you kind of have been through it already, so it doesn't affect you as much. I don't know. I obviously didn't leave because I felt like I was being treated unfairly, or
Right.
I felt like I was being yelled at too much. Like, that wasn't my personal experience. I mean, the practices were hard, but like, I'd been through those practices already for 2 years. Like, it wasn't something I didn't feel like I couldn't handle. Like, I obviously left under different circumstances, but I feel like, yeah, like they can get to you, like the hours that you're putting in, kind of like the monotony of going through plays, like play after play after play, doing the same thing. I can see how that might get to people, but if you love the game and you want to play and you want to get better and you feel like this is the program you chose and this is where you want to be, and until those ideas fade, that's where you're going to stay.
Right.
And so obviously there's people weigh the pros and cons of staying and going through that kind of grueling process, but it eventually ultimately makes you stronger.
Right.
And I don't think people necessarily understand like how those experiences can be applied to other things outside of sports.
Which you've clearly done. I mean, it requires a bunch of discipline to take the MCATs and go on to medical school.
Yeah, and even like I had to take the MCAT twice, right? Like it's not always like, things are going to be easy for you. I think that's kind of just a testament to, things are going to be difficult, and it's just, how are you going to prepare yourself for that next challenge? And that's kind of like the way that he taught us and the way that he was involved in coaching us. So I thought that was really beneficial.
Amazing stuff. Let's come back to Houston quickly before I let you go, because we've gone kind of out of order by design. Your family's been in Texas for quite some time, and you mentioned obviously Coach Slay being so influential. But how did you tell us a little bit again about how you found water polo in the first place?
So I moved from Minnesota when I was in second grade, so I was about 7, in 2008, 1998, and I joined. So I started elementary school, and it was like the spring semester, I think, was when I moved. And so one of the students in my class was handing out flyers for the summer league swim team. And so at that time, I had never swam before, really. I wasn't like that athletic. I wasn't like a big kid or anything like that. I was just kind of average, I would say. But I loved sports, and I felt like, this would be something that's interesting. So I started swimming that year, and actually started playing water polo that same year in second grade. And like at the time, there weren't a whole lot of players my age who were playing. It was like me and Matt and Austin, Dannon, and Stevie, and Matt's brother Gabe, and like Blake Burns, who was our goalie on that 2007 team. Like it was like a smaller kind of unit at the beginning, but we wouldn't necessarily have our own practices at first. We would practice like with the high school team, or we would practice with people who were a little bit older. So I think that was kind of an influence on us and kind of taught us the right way. And a lot of those players were in that 2001 team. A lot of those players who kind of taught us the game or kind of made us stronger. Players that we looked up to were on that 2001 team, and there's a lot of connections between that 2001 team and that 2007 team. So that's kind of how everything started.
In general, what's interesting about that is I don't know if this is universal, but many of the really great programs of any kind have the system where the older players are really doing a lot of the coaching, in a sense, right? They're in the pool and they're teaching you what to do. I remember that personally, and so it sounds to me like you had a very
I mean, Andrew Pudwell for sure taught us a lot, and I specifically remember Dustin Fleming. Like, I know Coach Mack raved about him, and like everything he said was true. He was just an amazing guy. I specifically remember him getting in the pool with us and teaching us stuff like this, like they're like moving us in certain places and telling us where to go and what to do. Definitely a major influence on us growing up, and something that like we kind of are indebted to. Like, I think having those experiences with the older players like is only a benefit.
So you have one more year of med school. Again, your life is over for a few years before you start practicing. What do you envision your role being, if any, in water polo when your career starts?
Ooh, that's tough. I like in between USC and here and med school, I was doing some coaching on the side a little bit. I'm obviously not in a place in Lubbock where there's any water polo really. There's like a club team, I think. But I don't know, maybe doing some coaching. I think that's probably like the most involved I could be at this point.
Right.
I don't know if I'd have the bandwidth to really get involved into the administrative stuff, but maybe coaching like some youth teams or something like that would be something that I'd be interested in. Maybe getting, depending on where I go for residency, maybe doing some club water polo again for masters. So that's
ambitious.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Your time is not your time when you're in that situation.
Exactly.
Right? Well, yeah, that would be incredible. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, though, to finish things up. Zain Bilal, that name comes up when you're talking about the best players to ever come out of the state of Texas. Where do you think you reside in that conversation?
That's tough. That's the
point.
I would say I'm up there, but I think it's hard to compare people from different eras. I think we had an advantage in my era because we really focused on going to bigger tournaments and playing on the national team, whereas I'm not sure other players in earlier eras had that opportunity. So I think I can't give you an exact number of where I am, but I would say I'm up there somewhere.
Yeah. Name some other names. I mean, it's not to put you on the spot anymore because that's a very fine answer, but who are the ones that you think have come out of the state that were, that you recollect as being some of the best?
Well, Travis Benson.
Yeah.
Well, these are just guys that I know personally.
Sure.
Austin DeLong, Austin Oliver, Matt Chapa, Stevie Ray. Like they've all had really amazing college careers. They put up amazing numbers in college, so that cannot be discredited. And then who else kind of coming up? Kind of blanking on some names.
That's all right. It's your contemporaries mostly that I suspect that you remember.
Yeah.
Travis was just a couple years before you when he won the MVP.
Yeah, he was pretty good, and actually he was at Long Beach State whenever I was at SC. And so that was, you talked about like having Texas people in LA, like that was really cool actually being able to see him. He was always pretty supportive as well. See him whenever I went over there. So.
Excellent. Well, we've taken enough of your time. That is Zain Bilal, who is the 2007 TISCA Water Polo Player of the Year and USC National Championship champion. Zain, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's it for today's show. My thanks to Zain Bilal for spending time with me on Zoom, and thank you for listening and for tolerating a conversation that sounds a lot like it was done out of a bathtub, which it wasn't. But and if you're wondering about the music that we end with, that's 12 Hour Mary, whose lead singer was Brett Bixby, a high school team and bandmate of mine, and you can find his solo work on myspace.com/Brett Bixby. Until next time, so long from Austin.
Turn my head again, I'm changing lanes, passing through the time I can't afford to lose. Just imagine all the things that we could do if I could spend it on myself and you. Trying to turn the world into a playground with all my might. Tables are turned and the ride is on the way round. Hold on tight, waiting in line, running my mind. I can't wait to get out again. Counting the time, thinking of mine. Anything to get out again.
This has been a production of TWP Sports LLC.
My dog is scratching at the door.
I can hear him.